Okay, so hello and welcome back to the Naturespace with Haith podcast, where we share inspiring stories and initiatives that bring people closer to nature. So I'm Simon King, your host, and today I'm delighted to welcome back a familiar guest, Dr. Kevin Eatwell. Kevin is a triple boarded specialist in exotic veterinary care, which perhaps Kevin will explain a little bit more about what that means, why it's so significant and rare as well, very, very rare. And he's about to open his own practice, which is something I'm excited to know a little bit more about. It's going to be called, have I got this right, the Fife Exotic Vets in November?
That's correct.
We're just on the eve of that, so it's hot off the press, literally hot off the press, because I first heard about this in the Cage and Aviary Birds magazine. So we're going to dive into what he's been up to since our last chat and learn about his exciting new chapter in his career. So welcome back, Kevin.
Thank you very much, Simon. It's good to be back.
Yeah, you're more than welcome, more than welcome. So look, as I say, it's great to have you back. The last time we spoke, you were already making waves in exotic pet care. This has been something that's been on. You've been doing for a very long time, and obviously it takes a long time to train to become a vet. And you've gone well past the training element. Although I guess you're learning every day. Really, there's something probably new, because to learn every day, it's such a vast, knowledge base that's required, isn't it, to do what you do. So, but I'm interested in what have you been up to? What inspired you to start your own practice now? And can you tell us a bit more, tell our listeners more about the Fife Exotic Vets and how it's come about? That would be a great starting place.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I've been working in the field, Simon, it's very close to 30 years now since I graduated, which is quite traumatic in its own right. But I've been working in the field for a very long time, and obviously I've been involved in setting up clinics and running clinics for, other businesses, other institutions, things like that, and working all over the place, really. And I guess we'd reached the point that we wanted to create somewhere that was, I guess we weren't restricted or curtailed by other employers, where we could provide the services, the level of service that we wanted to. We could look at the, I guess, and this is another thing, Simon, that we may as well throw in here as well, is the economics of running a clinic, because at the minute the vet profession is in turmoil with, on the one side we've got increasing regulation from the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons, and on the other side we've got the Competitions and Market Authority investigation into pricing structures within the profession. And to some extent this is motivated by the rise in corporate ownership of clinics, so where we have, if you like, international businesses coming in and shareholders coming in. So we wanted to sort of not walk away from that. We want to get out of that, where we could set up a clinic with people that knew what they were doing. That's the first point. The team I've got organised are incredibly experienced and knowledgeable. But also where we can say, look, you know what? We just want to live. I have budgies to feed, so the budgies have to be fed, of course. But that's what we want to do. This isn't about making money for shareholders or for a corporation. This is just about our families being able to support themselves, right, while we're able to provide a really good clinical service at the standard that we've all aspired to want to do. And obviously when you're working for somebody else or another corporation or a business, there's constraints put on that.
Right.
Our only constraints really are economics to some extent, and we can develop and grow this how our clients want, how our patients need, and how we would like it to, whilst hopefully pitching at a price point that means it's accessible. Because in the end of the day, animal welfare is our most important thing.
Mm. Yeah, so that's interesting that you say it's in turmoil. And one common point is one common comment when people talk about vets is vets bills. It's almost even comedians and so on, mention it. And so, is this what's different then about the practice in Fife? Is it? It seems to be that you're not setting out to for it to become this large corporate behemoth. Then it's something that you want people to be able to be more affordable then, so people can afford better or at least treatment at all. I mean, I guess if people at this time of the year, the temperature's just starting to drop. Really, we're in mid-October, really, aren't we? And obviously, I don't want to get political, but there's talk and concern of people not being able to keep themselves warm. And I guess if you're in that situation and you have pets, then you're faced in this terrible situation. Do I take my bird? Do I take my pet to the vet, or do I put the heating on? Is that the kind of thing that you're obviously you must be thinking about that on a day-to-day basis, but you must be thinking about that on the eve of opening up your own practice.
Oh yeah, and I think, Simon, there's probably 2 or 3 comments I can make regarding this. I suppose the first one is the practice is sustainable. We're making the clinic out of recycled shipping containers.
Really?
Okay, that's a UK first. The building insurers have had a great time trying to work out how to insure this building, because they're like, it's made out of what? And then it's clad on the outside, which of course has made them get all very excited about it being clad, followed by the fact that we're on a zoo as well. So, we're literally going to we have a different structure design. We're clad so it's going to burn down, and then the tigers are going to eat us. Yeah. And it's just like, none of that's going to happen. So we've made the building sustainable, because obviously that's an important aspect, as Haiths are as well, with your packaging and things. So minimal plastics. There's a lot of wastage in the medical profession, a lot of plastic wastage. And as sustainability becomes more of an issue, there's increasing research now showing that the use of disposable plastic drapes and gowns and gloves and hats and masks, they're not influencing sterility versus over cloth drapes and gowns and masks. So there's lots of things you can do to cut down waste,
right,
which cuts down on the cost of your supplies.
Right.
And then I suppose the other 2 things that we've got, so aside the build, and aside it just being us looking after our families, which obviously cuts things down, you've got us aiming to reduce waste, which is reducing cost of consumables. And then I guess the other 2 aspects on here that we've got is, because we're not looking at making this amazing thing, our profit margin is reduced down. Mm-hmm. That means drugs are more accessible relative to the cost of some of the online pharmacies, for example. Right. So all of those things we're doing to try and make this more accessible. But the other thing, Simon, which really, I guess, concerns me as a bird fancier, as a someone who's kept some reptiles and things as well, when you've got people that are keeping, I guess, pets that are perceived of less economic value or lower sentimental value, and I guess I'm moving then, looking into thinking, what about a breeder? What if they've got an aviary in the back garden with 20, 30 birds in? What if they're keeping and breeding and showing birds? Or they've got, they breed bearded dragons, or they breed ball pythons. These people, the cost of veterinary care for those, when they go to a vet and they take an individual animal in, that's quite significant when you've got an aviary full of 200 budgies like I have. I can't bring a sick bird into the vets every single day. I just couldn't afford to do that.
No.
So what we've looked at really hard is ways of, what I want to do is to make, much as we're in Fife, I want to make our services accessible to an online audience as well. So at the minute, one of the things that you can do, Simon, is you can pay for lab tests commercially from commercial labs. They give you a result and say, here's your results. We're not vets. We can't interpret those. You need to go to a vet to do that. Right. What we're aiming on doing is to provide a service for people so they can get access to our services online. We can go through the whole history, check out the collection, look at parasites, look at infections. We can advise on ways of dealing with those. They can send in samples to us. We can analyse them like the other labs do. Mm-hmm. But because we're a clinical veterinary practice and because we know what we're doing, we can advise on the management and control of those. And we're setting up a way that we can provide medications and treatments for those infections so they can be dealt with by those people, followed with care afterwards to say, how are you getting on? Is it working? Do we need to recheck? So in other words, we're trying to offer, which again is a first for the UK, a complete package. You can actually have a problem with your birds, you can speak to us, you can send in the samples you need, we can work out what needs to be done and action that effectively. And okay, if they do need to see a vet, then that's fine. But what we're trying to do is make it accessible, because at the minute you can buy whatever random things you like on the internet and try and treat your birds, and it's all doesn't work, wrong dose, etc., etc. What we're trying to do is make that accessible to people without having to come into the vet and then pay for a consultation fee in a real sense, that we can do it online. And that makes it far more economical and accessible perhaps to those people, so we can improve the health and welfare of birds, snakes, reptiles, whatever it happens to be, from people from further afield from the clinic.
Oh, that's really exciting, because when I read the piece, I thought, well, this is interesting. It was good to hear. And thinking about animal welfare, obviously, which I think, well, what I know, obviously, of course, that's going to be at the top of your list, ethics and so on, sustainability at the forefront of the work. That's brilliant to see that. But it seems to me that there's some disruption here in terms of, for a good reason, that you're challenging that traditional model then. That, if here I am in Lincolnshire, I might have an exotic pet, and I'm thinking, well, where do I go? Well, the first thing is who of my local vets specialises or has the kind of knowledge base that I need to tap into. That's the first thing, and not to smite our local vets. They may or may not have, but let's say they probably don't. So this is something that you are. And the other thing is not whether they do or don't. It's how far you are down that track of learning. You are probably, in fact, more likely to be much further down that learning track of understanding exotic pets than many other vets. So why should I be inhibited locally or geographically? I can't, though. It's just not sensible for me to jump in a car and head to Fife. But you're using tech then. You're saying you're not afraid to use tech here. Obviously, at some point, Kevin, I guess there's that point where you're saying, right, we've got as far as we can go here. Somebody needs to see this pet. Somebody needs to see this animal quite quickly. And I guess what you don't want to do is slow that process down. If it's quite urgent and there's an emergency, then it's important somebody goes to see a vet quite quickly. But you're also saying, I think, that there's quite a lot can be done using tech. And perhaps by doing that means that you don't have to build a unit and attract a huge amount of staff, which then finds its way onto the invoices very quickly, and also prevents you from offering the kind of service that you're going to offer, because getting off the ground is going to mean that you're going to have to put so much more money into the first place. There's much more risk. And you're going to have to charge people for that from day one, which is a challenge, isn't it, in this climate?
Well, yeah. I guess we're doing both, Simon, being honest with you. But yeah, so much as we're doing this online service, that includes telemedicine. So you can book a slot with us and you can come and chat with us directly, and we can have videos and see what's going on with your creature and how it's behaving, things like that. We're also, I guess, the other thing that's concerned me as well, and this is, again, we're a first in Scotland to do this, is, okay, we're the only dedicated site in Scotland for exotic animals and birds generally. There's no other place that's providing that.
Really?
But we're also the only place in Scotland which will be operating a genuine 24-hour care for all exotics, with people that know what they're talking about. So I'm going to be very tired in the next few months.
I'm just thinking that.
But what it means is, of course, is if let's suggest we're engaging with someone from a distance, we've analysed samples, we said, look, we've taken it as far as we can do with telemedicine, you've got to go and see a vet, we need X, Y, and Z. We're in a position that we can provide and support and help to that local veterinarian, because obviously we're a referral service as well, to provide increased support for that animal as well. So, it's kind of trying to make things more accessible. And to be honest, the online side of things with telemedicine that we're doing, partly that reason is, of course, for accessibility and to keep economics down. But also what they're doing, Simon, is they're giving us a little bit of help and support for the 24-hour clinical service and support that we're providing for people locally, but also for referring vets on a wider scale. Because, of course, we do need a building. We do need all the equipment necessary to do that. So this is sort of another way of supporting that, so we can try and keep our overall prices down, because this just is a little bit of a trickle feed coming in to help provide those clinical services. And this again goes back to our having our online shop as well. If you're getting things from an online pharmacy, you're just buying it from an online pharmacy, which actually is a corporate hiding behind that. But the fact of the matter is, again, from our point of view, it's all supporting the clinical service. And obviously, it's a question of whether you want to support a big corporation who are just selling you drugs, or whether you want to support a genuine clinical service that you can tap into.
Yes.
And that's really, I guess, the message that we're pushing here is we're not trying to rule the world, but every little bit is helping support that clinical service, which keeps prices down for our 24-hour service for people.
And I'm thinking, is it, if I were a vet and I'm at one of the universities right now, and I'm thinking about which field, or where do I move from here? Is it, how many of those vets as a percentage will move into exotics, compared to, say, cat and dog and so on?
I guess exotics is done in one of two ways, Simon. It's either done as part of a companion animal clinic. So the dogs and cats, so the bread and butter, and a lot of companion animal clinics now will see exotics as part of that. But it's not a major fee earner. It's not really a profitable business model, to be honest.
Right. Compared to cat and dog.
Compared to cat and dog, they just see them as part of it, and they're using the same facilities. So you've got that side of it, and obviously then I guess the amount of investment put in that area is very variable in terms of what equipment they've got, the knowledge base, the amount of training the vets have, or the courses they can go on. It's all based on, is it economically viable? Doing it as a standalone is the next sort of jump, and there's a few clinics out there now that are doing it as a standalone. But obviously, when you're doing that, and same as we are, you don't have to compete with barking dogs and cats when your animal comes in, or you're seeing someone who's keen but not really knowledgeable, and they perhaps lack the resources to provide you with a good service.
Right.
So, we've gone completely the other way. So I guess the number of specialist centres that are doing this, maybe in the UK, I'm trying to think now, there's probably about 6, maybe 10. The rest are all bits and pieces added on, bolted onto, or part of, a dog and cat practice. Really?
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, I suppose anybody listening might be thinking, well, this is all interesting here, but with your knowledge and your ability, if you were following the money, you probably wouldn't be heading into exotics. Then I think this is where this seems to sound. So you're passionate about what you do, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, you have to be.
Yeah.
If I wanted money, Simon, I think I'd be doing orthopedic implants and prosthetic legs.
Right. Yeah. So
I'm not. If you're looking at some of these significant orthopedic procedures that realistically they're very complicated procedures, the cost of implants is high, etc., etc., etc. But people will be spending £5,000, £10,000, £15,000 on some of these specialist orthopedic procedures. I have to see a lot of budgies to get anywhere near that sort of income.
Yeah. So is one of the reasons why you're doing this? So obviously it's your passion. It's a passion, and I know that from talking to you before, and I've spoken to people who know you professionally and privately, through the UKBC, which perhaps we'll go on to mention in a few minutes, but also other vets as well who've mentioned you. Passion comes across how passionate you are about it, but it seems to me that one of the things that's driving you here is that you feel, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but how much to you, how important is it that people, exotics in this specific case, that people can access the information that you can provide? Is that what's driving you? You want to make it affordable, but you want to put it package it in a way that it's something that every exotic pet keeper can tap into at an affordable price.
I think, Simon, if we take it back to, and this goes back to my experience in education and training and knowledge transfer and things, which is again one of the big things for the UKBC, as we've talked about before. I guess if you sat back and said, okay, let's ignore the individual animal here, let's talk about numbers. Let's talk about welfare and let's talk about numbers. Now, I could perhaps see, let's suggest I saw 10 people with an individual pet budgie today. I've improved the health and welfare of 10 budgies.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Lovely. But if I can tap into a breeder and make it accessible for them, partly, and that's also affordability too, and I can have an impact on the welfare of 200 budgies by providing my advice and experience for them, well, that's a massive win-win.
Mm.
And so there's lots of animals, I think, in the... I dread to use the word pet trade because obviously that makes us all sound evil people, but there are some very, very good breeders out there, high-end breeders that really do care for their animals, but it comes down to economies of scale. So if we can actually tap into that and educate them and train those and provide them with services that are accessible to them, the impact on the health and welfare of larger numbers of animals or birds is massive. And also, it's improving and increasing the defensibility of having these pets as these species as pets in captivity. Mm-hmm. And there's lots of positives to that from a mental health and well-being of the owners, for example, et cetera, et cetera. But if we can step up our game and say, look, actually, we are doing better by those animals. They are having better health care that people can get access to. That's a very good positive message to be sending, and very improves defensibility that people are taking things seriously and looking after these charges. So that's in part why the UKBC is exactly there, and why I'm involved was getting accessibility. And this, I guess, it wasn't necessarily planned when the UKBC was started. This is a new thing that's come out. This wasn't planned at that time, but obviously this is all about impacting health and welfare on a wider scale, and our website's going to, obviously, as we build it, will become, and our social media channels will become information portals for people as well, providing knowledge on how to care for their animals at home. And I guess one of the things we've done, for example, which I've been working on the last couple of months, is we've just launched our first aid kits as well, which we've sourced and organised and tried to make them economical, so people at home can actually have a series of stuff that they can use to help support their animals at home before they see the vet during working hours.
I see. Perhaps we should... We've mentioned the UKBC now. So for anybody listening, this is the UK Budgie Club, Budgie Regard Club. So this model, or some of the model that you've already mentioned about the community, about talking to breeders, I recognise from the work that you've been doing with the UKBC. And perhaps can you explain a little bit more to that for our listeners? And also... I suppose you've also touched on mental health, and there's no doubt in my mind, being connected to nature and animals can do a lot for our mental well-being. So perhaps we can touch on those two things, really, that community that you and your colleagues have created through UKBC, that knowledge, that opportunity to share knowledge, and then. You've already mentioned, and I think it's a very good point. If we can talk to breeders and create some best practice, really, in a way that says, look, this is how we move on, but also about how they've been able to tap into that digital sharing community that you've and your team and your colleagues have created and collaborated on. That would be great, really, because there might be somebody listening to this thinking, well, I have a couple of budgies, but I didn't know I could be part of a community, and where do I go? So there's quite a few things there to answer, Kevin. But I know that you can mop all that up into something that makes a bit more sense to our listeners. Yeah. No,
you're dead right, Simon. Community is important, and obviously part of what we want to do here is to build a community of owners that both who visit us in real people, as it were, but also virtually as well for the clinic. And the UKBC is one of those things that when we were looking back at, and again we're specifically talking about budgies with the UK Budgie Club, was that there's so many people out there getting poor advice over the internet or websites, and you would have heard it all before, Simon, of course, absolutely. Yeah. And we're like, there's just so many misinformation and things that just aren't true. And so to have a resource that can change that is very, very important. And that's what the UKBC has done and is continuing to do, is, again, very budget, brilliant, that's what we want for people. But obviously the information they're getting, and with, of course, the assistance we're getting from the likes of Haith and other companies as well, the actual money they save by being a member far outstrips the cost of membership, which of course is brilliant. It's a no-brainer, really, in terms of that. But equally, they've got all the resources and access to provide evidence-based, better advice, higher welfare, which they're not going to get from random Facebook groups left, right and centre. And, literally every day, the amount of just absolute rubbish that I read on social media that people get suckered into, and birds' welfare is compromised as a result, and birds die as a result. I have, had birds that I'm aware of that people have gone onto a Facebook group, taken advice, the bird has died, and it's like, if you'd just spoken to me, we could have solved your problem. And you
really,
still
Kevin, there's that much. There is that, the advice that's out there can be, as I imagine. Well, it's unfiltered, it's unchecked, and so on. But it's in accessible places where if people follow that, sometimes potentially, birds will and have died.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Really?
I mean, I've had out-and-out arguments with people. Everybody is a Facebook expert, Simon. Everybody knows what they're on about, and and it's that same thing, which is a problem. A personal anecdote or experience is far more emotive, far more believable or credible than listening to a specialist sometimes.
Right. I mean,
it's crazy.
Yeah, it sounds. I'm a big believer, really, in knowing, a few people who, are breeders, but also knowing. We both know Professor John Cooper, who's a veterinary pathologist, and so on. I am convinced there's an art and science to most things, and I'm not the only one who thinks that, but to all sorts of things. Certainly in animal husbandry, looking after animals, breeding birds, and so on, there's definitely an art and science. But I think they both have to listen to each other, and I think that when people like yourself and John have spent their lives studying the biology of animals, why wouldn't you listen? It just doesn't seem to me sensible not to listen. But it does frighten me that information's out there that could lead to the the premature death of someone's pet. And again, I guess this is the problem with the internet, isn't it? Really, is who's policing it. Really, and we like that in some respects. It has its price, but it also has its price to pay. And in terms of your example just there, it's quite severe, isn't it?
But I think you're right, Simon. There is an art and there is a science, if you like. And I think for a lot of people on social media, a lot of the breeders who aren't on social media but who are members of clubs and societies, then the art is very important because they've never actually looked into any evidence base behind what they're doing. And sometimes some of the things they're doing is, perfectly fine, and other times it's horrific. And I suppose then you go to the science side of it and you go, okay, yes, I'm going to pop in and see my local vet who will tell me what to do, from a scientific viewpoint or from an evidence-based viewpoint. There's very few individuals out there who have actually got access or can see both sides of that story, if that makes sense. And that actually is quite significant because a lot of the local vets who are helping people as best they can do, sometimes the practicalities of what they're suggesting or the economics of what they're suggesting just won't work because it doesn't fit in, because they don't perhaps have an understanding of the the in-depth, not so much how birds work, but the in-depth management of a collection of birds, for example, or an aviary or what have you, which I guess is where the art comes, isn't it? It's the experience of having those birds yourself or reptiles yourself, kept them, bred them, know what's practical, know what isn't practical, know how they're going to react to different ways and approaches to treatment. And that's only something you get through bitter experience over the years of dealing with these species, both as individuals but also as flocks or groups or as well. So I guess that's one thing that we bring that is very, very rare to find. We know what we're doing from an evidence-based science degree, triple-boarded specialist point of view. But in terms of the art, I know what works and doesn't work and what is going to be an acceptable way of, it's all about compliance to some extent, Simon. I know how to approach these people, say, look, okay, if we do this, this, this and this, I know they're going to run away and not do it. But I can start with things I know are practical and achievable that will improve welfare to start off with. So, we can blend those both sides together to come up with something that is pragmatic and sensible to improve welfare without making a crazy suggestion from a vet's point of view, or something equally crazy from I've kept birds for 50 years point of view.
Yeah, but you're not in your ivory tower here, are you? Just saying that this is how it works and referring, to everything you've ever learned. You keep birds yourself. You're a keen keeper of birds, and you work with the bird community. So I mean, these are the things. When I've spoken to one or two people before, more locally, one of their gripes is actually, how do they access the kind of information that they need? And it's certainly, they would say, it's not here locally. Now, whether they have looked hard enough, I don't know, or whether it's just not there. But I've had quite a few people say it's just not there, and that's not me. If there is somebody locally who offers that service, then please get in contact and have a chat with me, and I'm sure Kevin would like to know what they're offering as well. But I think that that for people like that, they can feel. And we've talked about the well-being of keeping pets, but I suppose they can also, there's this isolation of not knowing whether what they're doing is best for the birds. And I think some people who I've talked to are breeders, really, they, because, I hope, luckily and thankfully, we tend to deal with people who seem to be, they're doing the right thing. They're conscientious, they can only think about, doing what they do in a healthy, safe way for birds. But where do they go for this information? Well, hopefully they're going to go to Fife, or digitally or in person. That's great that you welcome them either way. They can also go to the UKBC, and so if they're interested, if they're keeping a budgie, they of course don't have to be. I think what I like about the UKBC is that I can join with, if I have one bird, I'm welcome. If I have a couple of hundred birds, I'm also welcome. I don't know, I've never tested the theory, but I imagine if I didn't have a budgie and I just wanted to be part of the community and learn more about keeping budgies, maybe that works as well, I don't know. But you're also approachable, and you are interested in talking to people who just want to enjoy, have fun, and look safely after birds. That's the UKBC side of things, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and I think it's also the same for our clinic as well. It's people that enjoy the company or the positive impact that birds, reptiles, rabbits, whatever it be, has on their health and well-being, because those having those animals as part of their family gives them so much joy or comfort, or, to be honest, in some people, a reason for living, Simon. I mean, some of the pets that we see come through, they are such an integral part. They're the bit that grounds some people in that I have to, be here because of my animals. So for having people that have them in their life, And you mentioned a very good point. There are people who are thinking about it, who are going to do some research before pet ownership. It's having that community that just gets it. Yeah. And I think that's it. Is much as there will be different aspects of bird keeping, for example, to go back to the bird keeping from people who breed them because they exhibit them, people who breed them because they like the colours, people who breed them just because they like breeding them and their birds have all individual names, through to people just having a collection of birds that they don't wish to breed from, through to having pets in the house that they have as pets in the house. Everybody shares the same love of the birds that they've got, and their journeys might be slightly different, but all of them still can be brought together. And we've got some members with individual pets. Their budgies are amazing, Simon. I mean, absolutely amazing what they can do. There are others that are just absolutely beautiful, right the way through to people that are breeding, as I do, some of the sort of more rarer or specialist mutations out there, some of which are quite hard to come by, where you're trying to sort of get them established, through to people breeding them for show. And so you can appreciate all these different aspects and infuse with these people and learn from each other. It's all about, there's transferable skills and transferable knowledge that you can pick up that really can be quite helpful. So we want to do all of it and get involved in all of it.
That's fantastic. Well, look, because I've got you here as well, people won't forgive me really if I don't ask you a couple of questions. And what I'm thinking about something is, you've mentioned before really how important it is to for us to understand our birds better in order to offer better health care. And I'm just thinking, what should owners know about the bird's health that they might often overlook? What are some of the common things, perhaps? I know that I'll talk to some people who have aviaries, and they will almost know instinctively whether something's right or wrong in the aviary in terms of whether the birds don't seem to be singing as much, even the odour of emitted from a bird and so on. So using our sensors and things. But what kind of things might people? What are the things they should always be aware of? Really, there's some of the common things.
I think if we're going to give people a couple of key messages, Simon, which I think is what we're looking at here. Number one, go and buy a set of scales.
Right.
And you can get whichever size scales you want. Weighing to the nearest 0.1 gram is perfect. And there's lots of sources for getting economical scales. My scales, so I'm very impressed. I'm impressed with my scales. I bought my scales, and then I spotted the same scales on police interceptors, so I know they must be accurate. You're going to allude as to why that was the case. I'm like, that's my scales. They must work. But, training, if you've got pets in the house, for example, training them to pop on the scales is one of the most significant things you can do. It's fun to train your bird anyway, but then you've got an accurate weight record because birds hide disease. And if your weight of your bird is dropping down, or in some cases increasing unexpectedly, that says, hang on a minute, this isn't right.
Oh, I see. So even weigh when they're healthy or seemingly healthy, because then
just train them to weigh themselves on the scales, and they come to the scales with a piece of millet spray, and off you go. You've got a daily weight, easy peasy, and a bit of fun. So do that. You can get scales for like £10. I mean, it's nothing, but that's critically important because then you can assess how that bird is doing. And if it's gone to the vet or it's on treatment, you can assess how it's responding to that because it should be gaining weight and feeling happier and stuff. Right. So weighing, cheap scales, do that. Number two, I guess, is having stuff at home ready for first aid, and that's why we've gone with our first aid kits. What we've done is we've looked at what things we feel would be appropriate for people to have at home. We've had the luxury of buying large outers for the clinic because these are things that we use on a daily basis, but then breaking them down into smaller amounts. So these actually work out very economical versus trying to do one yourself because you'd have to buy 100 of these and 50 of those, and you do when you don't need it. So right. A first aid kit.
And these, we can buy these online. We can go to... Oh, yeah. Have you got a website that we can have a look at?
So it's www.exoticvets.co.uk. And like I say, we've got an online shop there where our first aid kits are there. My wife and kids make them up at home.
Fantastic.
This is so it is a family business. So we got those. The third thing I would say for people, Simon, is behaviour.
Right.
Birds are good at hiding things, and the two subtle things you're going to see is weight change, which we've covered, behavioural change.
Right.
Just doing something that just isn't what you'd expect them to do, something a bit different. The beauty is if you've got behavioural change or you've got weight change and you're worried or concerned, you can send us a video where we can watch it on telemedicine. We can have a look at your weight records. We can say, yep, this is good, bad, indifferent. Advise accordingly. If that's something that needs monitoring, we monitor it. If it's something that can be dealt with products or services that are available online, great.
Yes.
If it's something that requires a vet trip, then it's like, that's a vet trip.
Yeah.
And then obviously we're in a position that we can provide assistance to that vet if need be, because again, we're doing referral services for the vets too.
Yeah, I love the idea of that. So, and there are so many videos online, Instagram, TikTok, and so on of budgies and other birds doing funny things. And so we're not afraid to get our smartphones out to record those instances. And it's nice that people do that. They've got a collection. This is how Joey looked 2 weeks ago. Here he is, bouncing around, doing his wonderful things. This is how he looks today. And that, I guess, the contrast there is going to be helpful, and then and where will you go next? So if you look at the images and there's Joey, he or she was, this is how they were 2 weeks ago. This is how they look now. Where do you start? Do you start thinking about diet and what's happened in that 2 weeks? Where does your the Sherlock Holmes cap comes out, doesn't the deer stalker?
Yeah. I don't stalk deer.
No, of course not.
No, Simon, you're absolutely right, and I appreciate this is audio only here. But I will just throw one thing at you. If I asked you, Simon, if you came in to see me, and I said, "Oh, can you describe to me your office?" How long would that take?
Oh, I see. Yeah. Well.
Would you mention everything that I thought was relevant, that I needed to know about?
Yeah, very
If
good.
you took me a video of you sitting in your office, I could go, why do you have the chocolate biscuits there, Simon, when I'm talking about your weight? Why is there chocolate biscuits? You didn't
now
tell
you
me
know why there's no camera on.
You didn't tell me about that. And you said you said you cleaned the water daily, but that cup of tea there looks like it's been there for a few. That coffee cup is got mould in it. It's been there for a few days, Simon. You haven't cleaned that cup up, have you? You told me you did. So that sort of thing, if you're looking at efficiency and you're looking at, someone who is used to having a deer stalker on, that video, that photo, in the raw sense, how many people clean their budgie's cage out before they go to the vets because they want to make a good impression? That's not helpful. I want to see your environment on its worst day. If that makes sense.
Very interesting. It's a fresh pair of eyes then, isn't it? Yeah, so in an ideal world, Kevin, we'd be able to fly you into all these aviaries, these bird rooms, but that's just not achievable. So here, you, as you say, it's this fresh pair of eyes using tech in order to deliver perhaps what we've become a little bit, accustomed to or a bit blasé about, but you may spot things. Hang on, for example, there's no window open here. Is that good or bad? And so on. What's the you may even see with shards of light coming through. Whether it looks dusty or not. In that environment, which is not going to be good for the birds or the bird keeper. So fascinating.
So, telemedicine and this is our friend. And I guess over the last decade, it's been progressively increasing where people have come in and said, I'll show you a picture on my phone. And, a lot of people, even online, still haven't quite got it. They go, my bird's sick, what do I do? And you're like, well, where's the video? Where's the still of it? I want to see it move. I want to hear what it says. I want to have a look at its feces. What diet are you feeding? What supplements are you giving? Can I have a look at that?
Right.
These are all things that you can do online very easily. And like I say, if you've got telemedicine where we've got, like I say, video chat, I don't have to ask you 20 questions. Yeah. I can just look at the environment and go, I want to talk about that because it's something that, you might not, when you're speaking to me or messaging me over email or however it happens to be, you might not pick up on things that are relevant, if that makes sense. And there's often the case with vets in clinics where you will have a conversation with somebody and they'll just use a turn of phrase or a word and you're like, hang on a minute, I need to chat more about that.
Yes.
Or even 3 or 4 days down the road, a piece of information comes to light and you're like, why didn't I have that information 3 days ago?
Yes.
That would have made so much difference to how I managed your animal.
Yeah.
And you never thought to tell me.
No, I mean, I mentioned Sherlock Holmes, but you are a nature detective, aren't you? This is it. You are. So, and if people want to access, because it's right, when we go to this traditional thing, if I talk to doctors will say things like, how many people will go in, and when they say, and they'll say, oh, I feel better today. And you think, well, what is going off in our heads that we're convincing ourselves we feel better today? And again, bringing a cage or transporting a poorly bird into a cage that's been in the loft now to get them to the vet, you're not seeing really the whole story, are you, at all?
You want to see them birds in their natural environment, how they behave naturally at home. Right. Because again, Simon, prey species, what do you do when you go to the vet? You sleek your feathers down and you pretend like you're well because you're in a completely strange environment. And you look better in that environment. So the vet goes, oh, you don't look too bad. No, of course you don't, you're in the vets.
You said about birds masking their behaviour as well.
Yeah, I want to see you at home when you're at rest, when you're sitting in your cage in your normal environment. The bird doesn't know it's being filmed. So film it from the other side of the room. Let's see how it's behaving naturally, which gives me far more insight into how that bird is. So, yeah, with telemedicine, much as, the online, you can say what you like about, the advancement of the online world, it's made a massive difference to how we can impact on pets' welfare at home remotely. And I think it's about time we jumped into that world, which is what we want to do, because I think there is a lot that we can do. That keeps the costs down because obviously it's down to professional time. And okay, yes, we have a building, we're doing all this stuff, but it does keep costs down for that purposes. You don't have to travel. It's very sustainable. And I think, if we jump forward in another decade, Simon, I think this is going to be an ever-increasing aspect of what we do. So, yeah, I think it's an interesting thing to be embracing, and I'm thankful that I've got a younger team coming along. We'll be training the next generation of specialists on the site as well, who will be, I'll be passing the baton on at some point to take over from that. So it's good that we can offer these services out to people, and I think they're becoming increasingly important. And it's made life so much easier to watch how birds behave at home and have a video of their environment where you can pull apart things, and it's very efficient.
Yes. And as
you've taken 20 questions to describe to me your office, and you still didn't mention the chocolate biscuits. I spent that within 1 second.
All the minstrels. I was afraid.
Minstrels. Okay. Yeah. Well, you obviously like music, Simon. I'm that sort of minstrel.
But you also, though, quite rightly point these things. These things don't happen in the normal 9 to 5. They happen after hours. My wife and I always said it's always worse at night, and that's one of the reasons that you've said. It's evident to you that once it's 6 p.m. or the weekend, most of these calls, or many of these calls, you say, and I can understand that being the case, are an out of hours service. But this conversation could be the difference between success, and by Monday, that may well be it. That's the end of it. And I think the out of hours service obviously is really important, because that's not only the knowledge, but the opportunity for you to give someone peace of mind, or to know that they've got somebody they can access. If it all goes wrong, Kevin, I'm thinking, unfortunately, and I guess it does, maybe someone's tapped into the wrong advice, or they've taken no advice, or they just haven't noticed soon enough. As you say, understanding your birds is key to being able to offer them good health care. So I think most breeders, let's say, I would hope, would understand the birds. But if it's gone wrong, and sadly, they've lost a bird, that's I'm imagining that's not. There must be an opportunity here then, or is there an opportunity here then for that bird breeder keeper to send that bird for post-mortem, so that maybe you can identify what has gone wrong, so that we can avoid it again?
Yeah. I think there's a couple of things you've raised. There's a couple of good points you've raised, actually, Simon. If I can pick up on out of hours, if you're seeing a local vet who deals with birds, they might not be working out of hours. And it might be the out of hours service that clinic offers is passed over to another centre, maybe half an hour away, where they've got different vets on who aren't interested in birds. And so you've got, firstly, I guess, a lack of experience, perhaps, in those vets out of hours. And that's, just the way it works. If you're running an emergency clinic, you can't have an emergency vet on at your clinic. That's, just for exotics. That's not how it works. And obviously then you've got the economic side of it.
Right.
So that's one thing which is important, and, well, it is going to be a personal sacrifice, Simon, is to ensure that you've got access to that 24 hours. And I guess the key here is if you're going to wake me up, just make sure it's worth it, please. I'm working the following day, and I've worked the day before. So that's that side of it. And then I guess you've got the, other side of it in terms of if a bird dies, etc., etc. Then, yeah, we're going to be doing post-mortem facilities and things as well for that. So we're going to be offering a range of remote services, and that's going to be one that we will be doing as well. Yes. And again, it's trying to make these things accessible and sensible. And normally, again, for post-mortem work, same as you'd be looking at doing fecal analysis or what have you, you're normally going to a commercial lab that will run the tests for you. They run what tests you ask them to, and you might ask them for the wrong test because you don't know and you haven't spoken to a vet yet. But equally, they say, "Oh, here's your results. We don't know what to do about them. You need to go to a vet," and then you make stuff up yourself. So again, with the post-mortem service that we're doing, because we're doing it clinically in the circumstances we're able to offer then the right advice and help to get those answers for you. Make sure you're spending your money on the right tests that you need without spending money on tests that you don't need to spend on, or because the sample's aged, for example. No point running sample X. Again, to provide help for breeders as well. So yeah, if they are in the situation that a bird's died, we're in the situation that we can then look at that, again, to put preventative medicine in place, perhaps, for the remaining birds in that colony or flock.
Right. Fascinating. I think that we'll, if it's all right with you, I think we'll probably check in with you early next year, if that's all right. And maybe, obviously, in the show notes for this session, we'll put a link to exoticvets.co.uk as well, Fife Exotic Vets. But don't, if you're outside of Fife and you're listening to this, as you've already heard from Kevin, geography is not a problem. This is what Kevin's on a mission. Kevin and his team, his young team, and everyone's smiling in this photo I'm looking at as well. So we must mention the team because they're obviously going to be, they've signed up to this, and so they're on board, and their mission is exactly the same as yours. They're trying to help people understand the birds better and deliver better health care wherever you are in the UK. It just so happens that you have to name a place, so let's go for Fife. It's as good as any, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, and if you're looking at mental health and welfare, we're obviously situated on the site of Fife Zoo, and I've been their vet for years, Simon, since they started, and so we've got the zoo animals back of house we'll be dealing with. Right. But it also means it's a bit of a destination, because if you are local to Fife, you pop in, you leave your creature with us, get yourself a season ticket to the zoo, which we've got a discounted rate for our clients for, and so you can just pop around and play with the lemurs while we're sorting out your bird, if you like. But we've also got 2 lochs next door. We've got red squirrel, we've got beavers, we've got pine martins. So it's really quite a lovely place in the country. So it is kind of becoming a bit of a destination, because then if you are taking your animal to the vets, right, then you can just explore all that. And what we've done, Simon, which is, I don't know any of the vets doing this, which I'm very excited about, is we've got restaurant pages.
Wow.
Now you'll know what those are, Simon, won't you?
I'm liking the sound of this.
So basically, you can come into us. We can key in, give you a restaurant pager.
Yeah.
The ones we're getting, touch wood, we need to test them yet, but they should give us up to 300 or 400 meters distance, which means you can leave your pet with us. You can wander around the zoo. You can grab a coffee in the zoo while you're there. You can go for a walk / run / paddleboarding if you like. Don't get them wet. Across the 2 locks, and we're hopeful. The trees may be an issue, but we're hopeful that we're going to get the range with these, that you can just go off with the kids around the locks and have a picnic while you're there, or whatever else you want to do. Yeah. And then when your pet's ready for collection, we'll give you a buzz, and then you can just turn up after you've got a buzz, and you can come and get your pet and go home again.
Well, what a service!
I don't know anybody else that's doing that. We just, that's just one of these little. We've been thinking about ways of innovating or looking at approaching things differently. This is amazing. The fact that you can just say, "Here, off you go. Do what you like. When it buzzes, come back and we'll see you."
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, we use the word unique often is overused, but I think you may have just found a unique selling point there. That is a USP, even in our over-marketed world. So that's amazing. Talking of unique selling, I mean, one of our unique selling points, as you know, is our super clean diets, and these are the things, aren't they? Trying to get, I mean, how we go to great lengths to try and remove as much dust and debris from diets, seeds that come into our building. The thing is, as what's happened out there since COVID and war in Europe and so on, is that actually ingredients are coming to us and they're less and less clean naturally. Because why would a farmer remove them? Because what they've done is basically they've made the product worth less because they've taken weight out. So, we're seeing a reduction in the cleanliness of product that comes into the building. So we're having to fight even harder to remove the same levels of dust and debris that we've been on our journey since 1937 with Super Clean. But as you know, with John Cooper, Professor John Cooper got involved really in about 2008 to been involved with Haith a lot longer than that, but looking at healthy diets and Super Clean. How important, because sometimes we need reminding, or maybe we're wrong, but feel free but how important is it that we, because my team will listen to this, how important is it that we clean our diets, that we stay fast really and steady and committed to removing dust and debris and providing that clean, healthy diet? Is that work important?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, Simon. I think when you're looking at, again, we'll just move it straight back to welfare of animals in captivity, or even human welfare to some extent. Your key elements of basic care to improve the health and welfare of animals or people is nutrition, their environment, their ability, behaviour, all of these sorts of very basic sort of functions that perhaps we now take as people for granted, certainly in the UK. And so when you're looking at species that we're dealing with, getting those basic functions on board and done well means what you're doing is those animals then, so instead of dying of nutritional disease or environmental disease, metabolic bone disease, or whatever it happens to be that you can go, oh my God, that's directly related to husbandry, why didn't you step up your game? Once we're able to get beyond that, then your longevity of those animals increases and their welfare increases. So good nutritional advice, Simon, good nutritional products out there, it's absolutely a cornerstone for health and welfare for all animals, right, if that makes sense. And obviously for the birds and reptiles and the exotics, some of these we're a few decades behind dog and cat perhaps, and that's another a good few decades or centuries behind people. So it's critical. Right. And again, it goes back to getting the right advice about nutrition and what supplements are needed and how best to deliver those to improve diet. One of the things that the UKBC, or I've been on repeatedly, is on iodine, for example. Very simple, very economical, massive difference to budgerigar health and welfare just simply by raising awareness of the importance of iodine supplementation for birds. It's simple things like that, just the same as, moving back to humans being given cod liver oil, for example. Simple things like that can have a massive impact on health and welfare of a population, far beyond the treatment of an individual. So good quality diet and good quality nutritional advice is sensible. And, if we go back to art versus science, Simon, now you will be well aware that of the complete pelleted feeds that are out there, and the vast majority of vets, maybe me included, would be advocating pelleted food for birds, for example. And that's all very well and good, don't get me wrong. But then you have the art side of that kicking in and going, well, my bird's been on seed for X number of years, and you've got to try and persuade people to convert and change that, and there's a compliance issue, and with smaller birds with high metabolic rates, you have to be very critical how you do that, because if you change their diet, they'll starve and that'll be them done. So, you come to that point where you've got to look at saying, okay, when you're looking at larger numbers, and coming back to economics as well here, you've got to go, what is practical? What is sensible? How can we move the nutrition of large numbers of birds forward in a way in which people will do it, but equally also the birds will accept that food? Do you know what I mean? And that's where I think your sort of business coming in with the quality of products and foods that you offer, it's that sensible route forward with appropriate supplementation where it's needed to get a nutritional upgrade to improve health and welfare. And I guess for me, it would be like, suggesting that everybody becomes vegetarian.
Yeah.
Now, okay, you might persuade a few people to do that, and yes, they will have health benefits from that. And I'm thinking from a health perspective here, no other than that. But actually what you want to do is to persuade large numbers of people just to eat one less food that involves high protein and fat a week.
Right.
There's no, do you know what I mean? It's the same sort of type thing here. It's about numbers and impact. And you're going to get far better impact on health and welfare upgrading, getting high quality seed-based diets through for the granivorous species than you're ever going to achieve by trying to persuade a small percentage that pellets are the way forward. So what you're doing is critically important, and it's having a massive influence on bird welfare.
That's good to hear. Thank you. I shall make sure the team listen to this, and it will remind us to stay our steady course, really, of removing every bit of dust. It is a 4-letter word to us. I know it's a 4-letter word to everybody, but it is a 4-letter word to us. We don't like it. It's in too many diets out there, there's no place for it really for us.
Well, I mean, the two things you've got there, Simon, straight away is you've got aspergillus, so you've got mouldy seed or fungal growth on seed affecting a bird's respiratory tract. You've got increased dust affecting a bird's respiratory tract as well. Birds are very sensitive on that. And, removing that debris, or even heavy metal or other pollutants and things from that, foreign bodies, the list goes on and on of the clinical diseases that we see as a consequence of poor nutrition.
Yeah, fantastic. Kevin, look, we've taken enough of your time. It's always a pleasure to chat with you, and I know our listeners will be interested to follow the journey as well. We'll make sure that I put it in the show notes. We'll put a link to your website, and perhaps once you're up and running, maybe we can add something to our blog with your approval, and maybe your team can put something together, and we'll put that on the blog so that if somebody comes to us and they want some more information, or they want to know a little bit more, or a little bit worried, they can come straight to you as well. So we can do that. Well, that's brilliant, because They can do it digitally. They can use this telemedicine, as long as they don't come looking for my Galaxy minstrels who want to start recording my office. But we'll do that. So thank you, Kevin. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. It's been a wonderful talking to you again, as always. Like I say, improving health and welfare of birds is a core function of what Haiths do. It's a core function of what we're doing. And it's good that it's just building that knowledge and I guess trust as well over time to get things improved for all birds in captivity. So yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's been lovely.
You're more than welcome, Kevin. So that's all for today's episode of Naturespace with Haith. So don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and join us next time as we continue to explore ways to stay connected with nature. And thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thank you.